When preparing bias tubes for Celtic-Style Appliqué, you want to sew with the fabric pretty side out. It's hard to tell the difference with this batik fabric, but I'm essentially folding it wrong sides together as I sew. Before I begin stitching, I like to slide in the press bar I plan to use to make sure I have the right seam allowance. If I'm sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I like to sew with my 1/4 inch presser foot. On the other hand, if I'm sewing with an 1/8 inch seam allowance, I use either a zigzag presser foot or I can use an adjustable presser foot like this. Hey everybody! In the last clip, I sewed my bias strips into tubes. If I used a 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew the tubes, I now need to cut the seam allowance down to 1/8 inch. Next, I'm going to use a plastic 3/8 inch wide press bar to help me press the tubes nice and flat with the seam allowance centered on the back side. But instead of pressing the tube with the bar inside, I'm going to scrunch the tube up on one end of the bar and press the fabric as it comes off the bar. This will give me a nicer, flatter finish and helps prevent the bar from heating up and burning my fingers. And here we go, before pressing and after pressing. Here I'm making a Celtic True Lovers Knot, one of the quilt patterns in my online shop. As you might know, Celtic-Style Appliqué is characterized by its overs and unders. I like to use a press bar to help poke the fabric through when I need to go under an existing line without pulling it up. I also find it helpful to use a water-soluble glue, such as Roxanne's Glue Based, to hold the design in place until I can sew it down. Hi everybody! In this clip, I'm using Roxanne's Glue Based, which is a water-soluble glue, and a Clover mini iron to set the glue as I work to get ready to sew my Celtic design. Hi everybody! Here I'm stitching down the bias tubes for a Celtic Blessings quilt. This is one of the patterns in my online shop. I'm using a blending thread that will barely be visible in the finished quilt and a small zigzag that is about the same in length as it is in width. One side of the zigzag goes into the background fabric and the other side of the zigzag goes into the bias tube. When I get to the intersection, I'll stop and do a locking stitch, and then I'll jump the intersection and then do a locking stitch on the other side. Then I can work my way around the rest of the design.